Hello there!
And welcome back to another video! This week I'm going to be doing the somewhat, hopefully anticipated acrylic painting video that I talked about a couple weeks ago. I actually did manage to finish this painting in one sitting, but as this video is going up, I'm currently in Japan, so I wanted to make sure that there was going to be videos going up for everybody watching while I'm away. So this acrylic painting video I wanted to do because it's been like over a year since I did my last acrylic painting, and it's been that long because I don't take any of my acrylic painting supplies with me when I go to school, like in my dorm room and stuff like that, because there's not really enough space. There's not like a good comfortable place to paint. There's not enough like space to just have my supplies, because like tubes of paint are quite bulky, so I tend to leave the painting supplies at my parents' place. And since I'm back at my parents' place for the summer, I obviously felt like it would be a really good chance to take this opportunity to do some painting, acrylic painting. And there's this thing that I typically do when it's my first time trying a new art supply, or when I haven't used a particular art supply in a long time, or I just haven't drawn in a while, to get myself back into the swing of things. I like to draw the thing that's the most in my comfort zone as possible, and I find that doing that makes the whole process a lot less intimidating. It's not so much like there's less barriers between you and the art if you're drawing something that you're very familiar with. So at one point that used to be whenever I had like art block, I would draw a chibi, but when it comes to trying out new supplies, a lot of my go-to things involve just a portrait, because especially with paint supplies, it's harder to get like fine details, and I find that chibis, as like safe as they are, they tend to have a lot of details packed into a small amount of space, especially because like the body of the chibi tends to be quite compressed. So for something like painting, especially when I never felt myself the most confident with a brush, I felt just a sort of portrait kind of thing would be a good idea. And then when I was just going through my saved photos, my drawing inspiration folders, my Pinterest, my Instagram, stuff like that, I was trying to find something that sparked some inspiration of like just what I could draw. Like I knew I was going to draw a portrait, but like of who? And then I found some old fan art of Jack Frost, and I was like, yes, Jack Frost, let's do him, because I really like Jack Frost, and I think I've only drawn him once, and I don't really think I posted that anywhere, and that was a really long time ago. So yeah, I decided to draw Jack Frost. Also, I really like the idea of like white silver hair, and I felt that that would be a little bit of a challenge because I don't think I've ever really successfully painted white silver hair in acrylics. So yeah, that's what made me decide to do Jack Frost. Another thing that I wanted to mention in this video is the fact that almost 50% of the frame of the video is my paint palette. So funny story, my paint palette is actually a tile, like a bathroom tile. So it's from Home Depot, because I felt like it's easy to clean, it's a smooth-ish surface. Sometimes when I mix paints with my palettes, I can see like the unmixed pigments kind of going to the little like sort of uneven grooves, but it doesn't really ever make much of a difference. And it's like large, and it was like $1. So I know that there's like a hack of using like an empty picture frame with the glass still on it as a paint palette, but if you don't want to use that approach, you can, and especially if anywhere near you or in your place of residence, stuff like that, there's been a recent like bathroom or kitchen renovation, steal yourself one of the tiles and you've got a free paint palette. I personally didn't get this for free, I had to pay for it, but a singular tile really is quite cheap, so that's what I use as a paint palette. And I thought that it would be very kind of interesting to include it, because though I know Bob Ross did include in all his videos his paint palette and how he mixed colours and stuff like that. Typically in more modern painting videos you don't see the paint mixing process as much, and like I don't know if it translates this way in the video, but I spend more time I think mixing colours and like tapping away and controlling how much is on my brush and stuff like that than I do actually painting. And I felt like that's something that really important for people who are watching this process in hopes of trying to gain any insights on how to do an acrylic painting, stuff like that. Not that I'm an expert or anything, but I just felt like mixing paint is one of the most important parts of doing a painting. And so the colours that I put on my palette to start with are white, a magenta type red, a warm orangey type red, a yellow, a navy blue, a sky blue, and black. And then the entire painting is just made up of all those colors. I've also got like that sponge on a stick thing, and I use that to dip into my cleaning water when it was like cleaner, and then I switched out my water and I did it again. But I fit that sponge in, and I don't touch the paint with the sponge, just clean water, and I use it to drip at least a drop of paint on top of every single dollop of paint on my palette. And I do that because, first of all, when I first started painting acrylics, I didn't use water at all, and it was really hard to get the paints to flow like I wanted. And then as soon as I started using at least a little bit of water, it was a lot more easy to control. You have to be careful not to use too much water though, because then it becomes like too transparent or too runny, or it takes too long to dry, so it kind of complicates things. But a little bit of water makes it a lot easier to control. It makes it sit a lot nicer on your canvas or your canvas pad. And the other reason I do is because these paints tend to dry a lot faster than you would want them to, especially when you're used to, say, oils or watercolor. Especially watercolor you can always reactivate, or gouache you can also reactivate, though I haven't painted with gouache before. So if you just keep your paints wet and you periodically like re-wet them, then they won't dry out on you while you're still using it, and then you don't have to like remix things. And yeah, that's basically my acrylic painting method. I did a pencil sketch to start with, and same as with my watercolor paper, to do a sketch with pencil on the canvas board, I need to make sure that I have a kneadable eraser instead of a normal eraser, because the kneadable eraser completely lifts up the pencil lines, while a regular eraser would just smudge it around, which ends up creating more of a mess. And then like the graphite smudges mix in with the paints, and then you get this kind of cloudy look that you don't really like. And anyway, it's just better to have a kneadable eraser if you're going to be using pencil directly onto your painting surface, I find. And yeah, that's essentially how I do an acrylic painting. If you want me to do like an in-depth tutorial for how I mix paints, I think skin tones are actually kind of difficult, but kind of not. Like, I still, because I'm primarily a digital artist, I think of colors in terms of the color square thing with the hue, like the value square with the hue slider that's in Photoshop. So I kind of think of colors as they need to be cooler, they need to be more saturated, less saturated. To make a color cooler, I tend to mix it with a blue or a green if it's a really warm color, and if I need to desaturate it, you tend to mix it with a complementary color. So if you need to make a purple less saturated, you mix it with a yellow you mix with a purple, a red with a green with an orange, that kind of thing. So that's what I know in terms of color theory. It's not the most scientific, but it's kind of, you learn to think of colors in terms of a spectrum, is what I think. More traditional artists might kind of see it in grades of like actual pigments, but that's not me. I'm a digital artist, so I think I see colors in terms of a scale of saturated, desaturated, light, dark, and warm and cool, basically, because you can have a warm and cool yellow, warm and cool red. Red, I think, is the most like difficult to kind of mix with, because there is a warm toned red and a cool toned red that's typically standard. So that's why I have both the magenta-y red and the orangey red on my palette, because they're both really useful. I actually only use the orangey red to desaturate some colors and to make the blushier skin tones, like around his cheeks, nose and lips. Those were the only situations in which I used the orangey red. The rest of it I use quite a lot of the magenta, actually. And you see me tilt up the canvas quite a bit because it's just easier for me to see. I found that a lot of the time, depending on how the sun went, I dealt with a lot of reflection on my painting that made it hard to see. So I flipped between like propping the canvas up and then standing up. I do have a desk easel, but I feel like it's too bulky. Like, this canvas isn't large enough for me to want to break out the desk easel. I really only use that for the really large canvases. And yeah, I think my favourite process in all this was the skin. It came out a lot more naturally than I kind of expected it to after so long without using acrylics. I do like the practice of mixing your paints on the canvas, so I don't ever like fully mix my paints on my palette, but I felt like it worked out. And the hair surprised me really with how easy it was. I felt like I got a really good balance of making the shadows kind of be there so it does look dimensional while still making it look like white silver. And I know it looks kind of demented. I feel like these paintings always look really weird until you add like the final kind of sort of outlines for the eyes, nose and mouth. I added the nose and mouth lines fairly early, but the eye lines were basically the last thing that I did, which made it look pretty weird for a long time. But once those are in, I felt like, yeah, this is a painting I'm proud of. The biggest challenge I find with acrylic paintings versus watercolor paintings is that I don't typically rely on line art afterwards, because I follow the same kind of process of like pencil sketch and then paints. But when with watercolors, after I've reached the painting stage, I go over, I don't do as much line work as I would do if I'm just doing an ink piece, or if I'm doing a digital piece I do like full line work there. But after a watercolor piece I do like selective line work, but the line work really ties things together, makes it look a lot cleaner and that sort of thing. But I felt that I don't have that crutch to fall onto when it comes to acrylics, which makes it a little bit more difficult. It makes me like have to think of the image in a different way. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain when you don't have line art to fall back on after you get so used to line art. But I feel like if you get a good handle on your contrast, it works easily enough. Like, I feel very satisfied with this painting, and it came together without line work. But I really don't think that I would be able to do line work on like a canvas type thing. And this is like a canvas board, I think they're called. It's just a piece of cardboard with the linen type thing of the canvas material glued on top of it. It doesn't have like a wooden frame or anything like that. But even then, I don't think a canvas board or an actual canvas would take that well to like ink pens or dip pens, and I can't get a fine enough line with the black acrylic because it's too thick, it gets too chunky. But yeah, this is the final pan of the image, and you can see the canvas texture on it, and you can see the way it blended, and there might be some imperfections, but I'm very happy with the way it turned out. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want more acrylic videos or any tips and stuff like that. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next week.